Welcome back to another episode of CATV Tech Talk. I'm your host, Drew, here with your co-host, Jesse. Jesse, how's it going?
Man, it's going, dog. What's up?
This is an episode. This is almost as close to my heart as metrics are. Self-install kits.
Yeah, you'll get my opinion on them as we go, but yeah, they're hit or miss, to be honest.
I think right out of the gate, I'll say it like I kind of say about everything else everyone bitches about. It's one of those things where us as technicians only get to see the shitty ones that don't work. But they do say that 80% of self-install kits actually do end up working.
That's it. That's interesting. I've never heard that stat, but that's interesting.
And I think that's a broad, obviously it's different for each cable company, but we'll go over the way that it affects the customers, the way that it affects us as the technician, and how it affects even our call center reps.
Let's do this.
He sounded Asian again. How it affects the customer. I don't know if I ever had a customer that was super stoked when I showed up after them having to deal with a self-install and having it fail.
You know, here's the thing. People I'd say the majority that fail are like people that move in and out of like rental houses or have had like a certain service forever, and like say they had dish forever, and they've had like Comcast internet or Charter internet. Well, they call the call center. The call center says, "Oh yeah, you're serviceable there, and we can just ship it to you because you got our internet." Well, they all they know is I'm supposed to hook the coax to the box, whatever, yada yada, and then it don't work. Well, it don't work because it's still the inside wiring is still connected to DirecTV or Dish outside, right? Yep. So that's a frustrating thing, right? And then like rental houses where people move in and out and have different services for everything. Say somebody lives there a year, they move out, they had DirecTV. Yeah, you're serviceable. That happens. Or they actually had cable or Comcast, Charter, whatever, and they come in and they mail them the shit. Well, there's 5 lines in the fucking living room where people put them in different places. That's how a lot of rental houses. There's cable lines everywhere. They hook it up. They hook it up one of the dead lines. It's just sitting there. Then they get pissed off and call the company. Yeah, dude. To me, I don't know if 80% is good or bad unless they're taking 80% a bulk of like pre-wired houses, apartments, and that's kind of that's got to be the bulk of it.
Well, I think it also depends on what area you're talking about. Because if you have a city, like you said, a lot of self-installs are people who are just constantly moving in and out of these apartments. We had them a lot up this way, and they tended to be very successful because, like you said, you had these apartments with 5 outlets in them, but we had plants so hot they were hitting 4-way splitters. So no matter, long as that customer didn't try putting a 4-way off their living room outlet and trying to run AOs through their apartment themselves, that would really be the only time it would ever fuck it up. But usually it was pure stupidity from the customers when it failed. Honestly, a lot of them were people they didn't even give a fuck. They didn't even try, but they were cable plugged into the wrong part of the cable box, or wrong power cable. I've seen that a bunch of times. Or the good old wrong. They do everything else right except put it on the right input on the TV.
Anybody 50 and under, this is my theory. Anybody 50 and under in a pre-wired apartment where everything's active, they should be 100%. They should be easily done, right? Because if you look, there's wall plates on every wall through pre-wired apartments. You hook the jumpers, you hook everything up. It tells you how in the instructions, right? So anybody 50 and under, it should be 100% success rate in those situations. But that's only in those situations. Then you start putting in quadplexes and duplexes and split-leveled houses, and that's where I think you're going to have the most problems, especially whenever like you show up, like when they run a trouble call on it, when it doesn't work and you show up over there and there's like lines hanging out of window sills and splitters all the way around the house, like used as barrels and shit, But yeah, man, it depends on the situation, I think, due to the success rate. But and then the elderly community, that's something else too. Like the elderly community, man, you mail them a modem and a fucking box and shit, and you expect them to hook that up? There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. Yeah, it's not feasible.
No.
So that's a big bulk of the failures too. That goes hand in hand with people in that demographic aren't as tech savvy as people, like I said, they're like 50 and under.
Yeah. As time has gone on, it's definitely gotten easier for customers. The self installs now, especially with a lot of the X1 platforms, and I know Spectrum has a version of it. You boot these boxes up, and most of the time the boxes already know where it is. You don't have to put any information in, or if you do, you only have to put in like the last four of your telephone number, or who knows, it's probably changed by now. It probably scans your face and just knows you based off of that. But it wasn't a matter of like, here, go to comcast.com/activate and then type in your 16-digit account number, and now let's try to put in that MAC address. To me, it's definitely gotten easier with time, and especially with now the wireless boxes. I mean, if you think about it, these companies, which, I mean, it sucks to say this too, especially with COVID being the way it's going, and especially how it's getting worse again. A lot of these cable companies are learning to adapt without technicians, as much as it sucks to say that. So with these wireless boxes, the customer literally has to successfully hook up one AO, and that AO being the modem. If they can do that, they could pretty much put wireless boxes throughout the entire house if they needed to.
Yeah, see that, as everything evolves and gets better over time, right? So if you take like the SIKs that you'd get 10 years ago, compare them to now, there's no comparison. It's simplified now, 100%.
Yeah.
10 years ago they'd mail out 3 DVRs and a modem, and these people get the shit, and a week later you get a trouble call, said no signal. You get out there and there ain't even a line in a house, right? Well,
Yeah.
now that still can happen, but with this new equipment, the worst case scenario, you got to run one outlet.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very much simplified, and it should, not more that I'm thinking about it. It should be a good success rate. 80% to me still seems high, but there should be a pretty high success rate because there are more pre-wired situations than older. In most situations, people, houses are bulldozed, they build subdivisions, right? Like things
Yeah.
evolve and get better. I think there should be a pretty good success rate, but you're always going to have that demographic that don't understand technology, and you're going to have that situation where the drop's hooked up, but it don't feed anything. You're going to have the RF problems, at certain houses. But I think the biggest deal is really that demographic that just don't comprehend or just don't give a shit to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. The company I worked for previously, our success rate was actually like 95, I believe. I was told in our region. It was like a 95% success rate. We only saw the 5% that didn't succeed. And they said even out of that 5%, two of them could end up going to some type of payment center to swap the equipment out over the counter. It would actually fix their issue. Again, how accurate is all of that? Who the hell knows? That could have been a bunch of smoke blown up my ass. But I don't know where the failure rate comes more from. Or I don't even think I'm sorry, it's not the failure rate. I think the success rate is so high is because what ends up happening is these customers end up putting these services in, and even if signal shit and it still works, I think they're going to try to ride it out for as long as they possibly can. They didn't want a tech coming to do the install in the first place, so they want to try to do as much as they possibly can by themselves. And I think later on down the road it will end up triggering a trouble call. So I think if you were to take like a 30-day, take two different numbers, take a number after 30 days of how many people actually required you to go there and do the install. So a true failed self-install kit. And then also have an additional number that is like maybe 90 days. How many people after 90 days ended up triggering a trouble call after doing a self-install kit? I think your number would go down dramatic.
See, I think I'd say 65%. That's just a guess.
I'd
And the
still go
reason I
more
say
towards
that,
75.
and it could be higher, but if you think about it, the company, if it's on and they're not calling in about it, the only way they're even going to say anything about it is if it's throwing noise back in the plant or it's causing some kind of problem, right?
Yeah.
So system techs are running around, they're seeing modems that are levels that are bad at this house, whatever, and they may turn it in to try to get it fixed. But at the same time, if it's working and they're not calling in and it's not causing anybody a problem, it's going to sit there till somebody does call in about it. I mean, you both know if it's got a return of like a 59, and you're liable to get like a slow speeds or something, pretty soon, or if the MER's shit, you're going to have some tiling issues at some point, and they're going to call in about that. So, I'm with you. I think what they call a success rate is, I'm not sure what the demographic for that is, or the dynamic. My bad. Let me rephrase that. The dynamic, is it within 30 days that they haven't called in? Is that what it is? 95% success?
I believe so. Yeah, it's 30 days
Okay.
after. Yep.
Okay, so they did it themselves. They've been good for 30 days. They haven't called back in. But you got all these levels that are fucking jack shit. So sometime, I think, over that 30-day mark, it may be a week, maybe a month, they're going to call in a trouble call.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into how that affects the cable tech.
Yeah. So, I mean, so as a customer, you're having to deal with freaking calling the call center and having to deal with saying that, yes, it's ready to hook up, but in situations where it's truly not, because it's a new subdivision, the house has been knocked down, but the person who lived there um, a year ago lived in a crummy house that had cable for 30 years prior to that. So the company still thinks it's ready to go. I've seen that tons. And I mean, and that just sucks. And then, like you said, that just kind of all bottles down and comes to the person who ends up going and knocking on the front door, the technician.
Yeah, and you know, when you're a tech, like, I got a ton of these when I was still in the field, and they would put them in as failed SIKs, and they were worth like 6 points. Okay, so you didn't have you didn't have a lot of time that you were supposed to spend there, but all of them ended up being full blown fucking installs, right? Just about it. Because once you're there, you're required to, certify the drop, make sure it's grounded, change all the connectors, yada, yada, yada. You can't leave garbage. I think we mentioned that before. So they turn into full blown installs. And what happens is the customer don't understand that, because they're like, well, damn, it works. It's just kind of, it's a little slow. Well, man, this is bad. This is bad. We need to change this. It wasn't grounded, blah, blah, whatever. But they don't understand that. They said, well, they told me it shouldn't take you 10 minutes or 20 minutes, right? They'll say that like the call center told them that. So all that shit rolls, like you said, right downhill to the tech, which really fucking sucks. And I dealt with that a lot. And half the time, like, I would have to do the outside work, and I would have to reschedule the job because they like, well, I got to go. I was doing this on my lunch break or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I
So,
hated that shit.
yeah, like, and you didn't even get any points for doing it at all. You just did some outside work and didn't even get credit for it. So, like, that rolls downhill. And something else that sucks, like, for the tech, all right, say they were at a trouble call on Tuesday. All right, so say Tuesday was the 6th. All right, I'm just saying the 6th. And they rewired some shit. Everything's passing in the green. All their shit's working. Well, they decide they want a box in a bedroom, right?
Yep.
Well, then they mail that box out, and they don't fucking hook it up right. Well, who gets the repeat? The tech.
Yeah.
And that's kind of fucked up that he had nothing to do with it, but he's going to get gigged on it.
Well, and I mean, I don't know how many times you came across this, but I've actually had it come back and bite me in the ass a couple of times, where you show up for a failed sick kit and you end up, you show up, you see 10 boxes on the account. And this was more before PHT, because now with PHT, you can pretty much see the status of all the devices or any home health check or whatever your company uses. But back in the day, you'd show up and, you'd have you'd see 5 cable boxes on the account and a modem, and you'd show up and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, like this one, the main one in the DV or the main one in the living room, they couldn't get it to work." And you're like, "All right, no big deal. Take care of it, fix it, done, on your way." But then 2 weeks later, you didn't realize, and maybe this is shame on you for as the technician, but I have asked people and they're like, "Oh no, we're good. Everything else is working fine." But needless to say, they other boxes have never been installed. But now 2 weeks later, they're trying to install this box that they've had sitting for weeks on end now. And now you're gonna get hit with that repeat because the box is, a firmware behind and it never takes the update or something crazy like that. So even just I don't know. Again, I know I keep saying we only see the shitty ones, but even those shitty ones, I felt like it's just crazy how shit can happen and how everything just falls so neatly out of place to just trigger so many repeats.
That situation. Maybe that's why my numbers were so good because I was really anal. When I looked at the account, I I would look and say, okay, well, there's 6 boxes and a modem, and I would ask. I'd be like, I would go over it with them before I left, and they'd be like, no, I only got 3, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd go through the house and I'd check numbers and I'd write down the 2 or 3 that they didn't have,
Yeah.
and I'd have them move them down to like a dead outlet to make sure that they didn't fuck the rates up and it didn't hit me later. So that's kind
See,
of
and then I always looked at it. Well, when I did that, it still fucked me because they'd end up plugging that cable box back in, then it wouldn't end up working, and they'd end up calling anyways. Because that was my theory behind it.
half the time what ends up happening when you're in that situation, or this is my experience anyway. Say, okay, they got 3 boxes in a modem, but you're seeing 5 boxes in a modem, right? So those 2 other boxes, sometimes they've been sitting in a warehouse for a month or 2 or 3 months, and they just hadn't been scanned back in yet.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's possible too. But at the same time, I tried to make it to where these are what's active, because most of the time, what would happen when those dead outlets, when they were trying to hook up those dead boxes,
Yeah. Yep.
they would put it in as a change of service so they could charge them an install fee.
Yeah.
So if you got to change the service, you weren't going to get a repeat on it.
See, it didn't matter for us. Even if it was a failed self-install, you still got a repeat on it.
No, not a failed self-install kit. They would put to install DVR or upgrade to this or whatever. They would set it up to where kind of where we were bitching last week, where the system's broken. It was more at that point in time to try to basically not fuck the guy over, right? Like he had nothing to do with it, so we're not going to screw him. We'll just turn it into a change of service.
No, we never had any of that.
Yeah, that I had a lot of. Now I didn't personally, I'll say, but my area was actually pretty decent in terms of like, they were real stickler. They never wanted to cancel trouble calls, even if they weren't warranted.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like if it was something absolutely stupid, you were there the day before and you worked your ass off on it, like they're gonna go to bat for you about it. Like, and like we'd set it up. Like I remember one time I got a repeat on, and we're talking about self installs. It's kind of funny about that. I did the install like 2 weeks prior, and then they mailed this lady a fucking DTA, right? Just a DTA. Well, she wanted to hook it up in a bedroom with a lady over the phone. Now, this is a long time ago, so we didn't have wireless boxes. This is like 2012, right? And the lady on the phone told her that, hey, you can just hook it up, hook it to the power, and hook it to the back of the TV, and it'll pop on. It'll run off your other box.
No,
that shit didn't work. That didn't work back then. Well, I had just run a brand new 11 drop. It had 5 brand new outlets in it. It was probably one of the best installs I ever did. And I was pissed. I said, Rick, they mailed her a fucking DTA, man. How am I responsible for that? And he's like, dude, you're right. So he called in dispatch. They changed it to a change of service install DTA. And then they charged her like $50 for me to go out there and hook up a DTA. Granted, I had to run an outlet to it, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, and I think that just, and that was the kickback from customers I always hated about self-install kits, because you'd show up and, well, I'm not getting charged for this. Well, the person on the phone said I wasn't getting charged. Well, no, you failed to install it. I am here to install it. There is an install fee. So they would end up setting up trouble calls when they were really supposed to be fucking failed SOIs. Or not failed, I'm sorry, when they were just failed sick kits.
Yeah, I seen that too, where so they wouldn't charge them, or you could code it, and they put it in the comments too, like, please do not charge customer for visit or whatever. You remember that?
Yeah, yep. And that would suck
Yeah.
because if it was so for example, if you ended up going there, I don't know, a week before for an install anything, and now you were going back there and customer service set it up as a failed, or they set it up as a trouble call so they wouldn't get charged for the install. Well, now that technician that was there previously is getting hit with that repeat just because customer service doesn't want to set up and get them charged. So you might not be charging your customer, but now you're hitting a technician with a fucking repeat on something where it should really be a change of service.
Every time they'd make me do that, and it said on the comments like, "Do not charge customer for visit," the first thing I would code it is charge trouble call.
I
Every motherfucking time, without exception, first code charge trouble call.
I was always
swear.
explained it was the first two codes. So if it was a little old lady, I always tried to do I always put like outside drop connector, outside drop, or something along the lines of that. That way they wouldn't be getting charged for shit. If I truly thought they deserved it, that's exactly what I would do. Just charge.
I'm kind of sensitive to old ladies too, you know, that can't hardly walk and try to feed you Debbie cakes on the way out the door. Yeah, I'd be nice to them, okay? Don't make me out to be Hitler now, okay? But for the most part, dude, I'm telling you, if the call center put on there, do not charge customer for visit, and it'll say like failed SIK, hookup modem in bedroom, whatever. I'd be like, fuck that. You know, one time lady pissed me off so bad I put it at all four codes. I was like, I hope they charge that bitch 4 times.
Oh my god.
You remember that 999 code that you had to charge? You had to put like after all your codes.
No.
Well, we had a code that was 999. It was a completion code, right, to complete the job.
Yep.
Well, so like, yeah, I remember. I forget what all the code numbers are though now, but like I remember like one was replace drop, and like 142 was cancel, and you know, whatever. But you put your 3 codes, and then you had to put 999 to complete the job. And I didn't know this, but for a whole like months, I was putting. They told us at a meeting, but I guess I was like hungover or some shit because I didn't pick that shit up at all. Well, for like 3 weeks, I was coding out jobs, but I wasn't putting that 999 code, and not one of my jobs counted against me.
Oh, that's fantastic. See, but I'm surprised nobody ever called you saying, "Hey, why aren't you completing any jobs?"
They did it. Well, no, they were coded out, like closed in the system.
Yeah.
But that 999 code was supposed to trigger, I guess, from what I understand, like I guess
A report or something.
Yeah. And I wouldn't put it on there, and that's kind of when this happened. When that bitch pissed me off, and don't charge her. And she was like, if Karen was like, if there was a president of Karens, it was this woman. Okay, like she was the president of Karens, the Karen Bitch Society. She was the fucking president, nitpicking over everything. Well, the lady on the phone didn't tell me that. Well, bitch, I don't know what to tell you. I'm telling you that now. You know, like what the fuck?
No
And
shit.
she'd follow me around. She'd be like, "Do you have those little booties on? I don't want any smudges on my kitchen floor." Man, fuck you, bitch. I hope they charge you 4 fucking times. So I put that in. And it was like 3 hours later, I got the text. You have to complete jobs with a 999 code. I was like, oh.
God.
But yeah, dude. So it kind of sucks, man. Like for the text, how it rolls back, you know, on them. Like if even when they had nothing to do with it, a lot of times, and how they catch the shit from the customers because they're, you know, as a tech, you're in their face, right?
Yeah.
Like they can yell at people on the phone, then people on the phone just hang the fuck up. And I'm sure it happens every day, right?
Yeah.
But when you're there, you're in their face, and they're going to take the blunt of it. You are that company right then and there. So you take the blunt of all that shit.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it affects the call center though too. That's the shitty part because as soon as they get that stuff in the mail, they're calling the call center going, "Hey, listen, I called y'all 2 weeks ago and you said I could do this. This shit just showed up on my front door and I can't fucking do shit. I want you out here now doing it." And that poor call center person's having to go, "Okay, well, let's schedule your appointment." And they're like, "No, you don't understand. I want it now." And they go, "Well, what the fuck? Like, I can't really give it to you." "Well, let me talk to your supervisor." Now that call center person has to get their supervisor on the phone. And then long story short, what ends up happening is that fucking supervisor in the call center ends up reaching out to dispatch, and dispatch ends up calling Jesse at fucking 4 o'clock in the afternoon going, "Hey dude, this fucking broad wanted this fucking box installed because she thought she could do it and she really couldn't." And it's just a never ending circle. And fucking
And that's bullshit, man. Yeah,
but it comes all but I know we brought this up in our last episode specifically too, but like you said, that's complete bullshit. But where's the failure point? It's not dispatch, it's not the tech, it's not the call center.
it's really quota and what they can fit in, and when they keep stretching stuff, and that's where you get jobs that are like built wrong, right?
Yeah, because they're forcing it in. They're being you, which again, and I don't blame a call. I mean, I do and I don't because I expect everybody to do the job that they're given to do. But as a call center person, you're being for this person's fucking going down your throat. Your supervisor's not available. You just want to get the fuck off the phone. It's past your shift. I hate to say, I think I'd be that fucking person who goes, "You know what? There's a fucking 4 to 6 trouble call tomorrow. I'm just gonna jam his ass in there, pretend it's a trouble call, and I'm just gonna wash my hands with this." Because how many times do you think techs have done that over the years? Where they show up to somebody's house, go, "Fuck this, I'm putting a drop amp behind the TV and just calling it quits." So I think that's just that call center's text or call center person or whatever you want to call them. I think that's how they do it, and I think that's why they do it is they're dealing with it just they're dealing with the same thing as a technician. They're trying to end the misery in a different way.
No, I'm with you, man. Like, and you can't blame them.
No,
but it's just
because
but it's just pushing the shit off on the person that's going to be right in their face.
true, but then again, and it sucks, but if us as technicians can also do our jobs right, we can make sure that person's happy as fuck when we roll in. And it does suck, but how many people have you flipped around just walking through the door? They're pissed as fucking 5 minutes later, they're in a much better place. That's what we were good at. That's what we were trained to do.
Well, that's cool, well and good, man. But at the same time, they give you that shit 4 or 5 o'clock. We talked about this before too. Little Jimmy's got a baseball game, or me and my wife had dinner plans, had reservations tonight. All this shit just for some entitled asshole that wants to watch, Sex and the City reruns.
Yep. And again, and that's where it comes down to the person who's pulling the trigger on those. Why? And and I almost don't even want to say this one. Just, I got called out for a holiday. We'll just say it like that. I got called out for a holiday on call. It was, I don't know, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the whole company was shut down for the day. So nobody was working. And they called me out. I drove 45 minutes for a wrong input issue. Which, granted, don't get me wrong, I'm truly not complaining because I got away from my ex-wife. But and I made a little extra money that I never saw anyways. But to me, it was just, how the fuck can they force somebody to go in for an input issue? Like, if the telephone line was down, I would understand. If honestly, to me, it was more telephone should be the only thing that's for on call, or a down drop and it's a hazard and it's hanging in the street or something like that. But I would just love to know what justified a technician getting paid to go out on a holiday to change someone's input. Why was it okay for that call center person to put that job in? And how are they getting paid more than that technician and not being reprimanded for it?
Well, one Thanksgiving. I know we're getting close to Thanksgiving here in the next few weeks. I'll tell you
Well,
this.
that's why
One
I said I
Thanksgiving.
couldn't tell you what fucking holiday it was.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't give a shit. One Thanksgiving, man. I ran Thanksgiving every year for whatever reason. Thanksgiving and like the 4th, I think. And one year I got called out at like, I don't know. I got really fucking drunk the night before, and I remember waking up and it was like maybe 9 o'clock. And I was like, well, I hope I didn't miss anything. I looked at my work phone. There wasn't nothing on there. So I was like, yeah, I'll go back to sleep. Well, then I guess I fell asleep, and then the thing started ringing and ringing and ringing, and I answered it. And there's this dispatcher that says, got a customer that's all out. They're all out over here at so-and-so. And it was literally maybe a 15-minute drive. But I was like, is the street off or is it just one person? She said, no, they're saying it's all out. And I was like, okay. So I went over. I figured I was going to go over there and fucking, climb the pole, go up the tap. It's going to be dead. I'm going to turn it over and go the fuck home, right?
Yeah.
Well, I get over there. Everybody's fine. It's just this one house. Motherfucker, he went and picked up 2 DTAs 2 days before, like Thanksgiving. And he went to hook them up out in like his building where him and his buddies were going to sit, and they were hooking up 2 little TVs to watch football.
Yep.
And the son of a bitch run like pieced together Walmart cable from the ground block, and neither one of them would lock up.
Jesus.
And I was like, dude, I tell you what, I can't lay this cable on the ground out here, but I can give you enough cable and make sure it's active. So if anybody asks, I didn't lay this here. And he says, no, I won't say nothing, brother. I tell you what, he was a big redneck guy,
right? My favorite.
And yeah, he was just he was wearing camo overalls without a shirt on his Thanksgiving. Just put it that way. Well, anyway, yeah, dude, I just strung out like, I don't know, 40 feet, 2 40-foot jumpers, and put connectors on them and hooked them up to a 4-way and put an amp. I had to put an amp in there. This is back before the gain amps and shit. I left the modem outlet and jumped an amp to like a 4-way, I think, and run it out there. And I hooked them up and I stood there for a minute, and within, I don't know, 10 seconds, they both popped on, right? And I thought to myself, I understand this was something this guy wanted to do for his Thanksgiving with his buddies out in his building, drinking beer and eating turkey. But is that something that's necessary on a holiday that we're all trying to celebrate?
Again, exactly. What's the justification? How do you justify sending a technician out for that?
The only thing I could really see, like the 2 you mentioned, and internet. A lot of people work with the internet, right?
Yeah, but it's not a necessity because you have a phone. True. It's not an emergency.
Not everybody has unlimited data either. So, they really rely on that Wi-Fi. So
yeah, but I feel like internet does not affect health or safety. It doesn't affect anything along those lines. So to me, it should not be an emergency. And if it is an emergency, there should be a premium charge placed on that customer where the technician actually benefits from it.
Well, I could see that. Let's say this. All right, let's try this for a minute. Just about 2 weeks ago, my dog. I think I've said this before. I live in a fiber to the home system.
Yep.
So there's a Cat 5 line that runs from that little mini node out there, the NID or whatever the hell they call them, all the way under the house, runs into like a little jack on the wall. Well, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I don't know, a month, something, my dog chewed that son of a bitch all to hell. And I'm like, motherfucker. And all of a sudden, everything in my house went off. I'm trying to do my night work off my phone, which didn't work well. And I'm like, everything that I do on a normal basis, I can't fucking do it. So I called in, and hell, it took 5 days before they got out here to put a jack on the wall. Like, I didn't have tools or anything to do that.
Yep, because it's
anymore. No, it's just Cat 5. I just didn't have any tools anymore. Like, I could have put the jack back up, but I just don't have tools anymore. So I was like, fuck. And like the second day, I went up to Lowe's and I was going to buy me a tool set and a jack and some shit. And I was like, well, I ain't spending like $90 to put a fucking jack on the wall when I can get a free trouble call. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
no shit.
but yeah, it was so it really does affect like people's well-being to a point. But I could see that on like a residential, like maybe putting a fee on there, but like on a business account, like that should be a no-brainer, I
Yeah,
think.
but I'm talking. This is purely residential, not business at all.
Yeah, but you see my point, right?
Yeah, considering this is self-installs businesses, at least I've never heard of a business doing a self-install. But if they're out there, let us know.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, man, I tell you that like that one particular job I had on Thanksgiving was kind of dumb. Um, it just is what it is. I don't. We can't control how it gets funneled down, but I would agree to know. I'd like to know what the justification behind it is.
And I think a lot of technicians would want to know the justification. Is it sucks because that was always my big thing as a cable technician is every LOB or every time I sit down for a meeting, it was like mommy and daddy were about to try to explain something to me in the most stupidest, simplest way possible, but wouldn't tell me 90% of the background stuff. They would only give me the 10% that I really truly needed to know. And I fucking hated that. That was just so aggravating. It was so infuriating.
A lot of these meetings that we had, and I actually remember when they first started doing self-install kits. That was like, I remember how I mentioned a long time ago that we were doing these hot taps.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of episodes back, I was talking about hot taps, where and kind of like what Steve was telling us when during COVID, where they were basically just making sure the drop was good, hecking up everything outside,
Yeah.
grounding it, yada yada. Like I remember at one point, remember how I told you how I used to get pulled out of production, like a lot, and do like special projects and stuff.
Yep.
Well, when they first started doing those hot taps, I was pulled out for like a week and a half, and there was I guess they were backdated, like I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks on these hot taps. So they gave me like 25 of them a day, right? Which if you had to run 25 drops, that's impossible, right? In a day, drive time and all that, just not
Oh yeah.
happening.
Fuck that.
But I would go to these things, and if they were hooked up, I'd shoot the house for noise. If it had noise on it, I would just code it needs install. If it was clean, I'd change the connectors, mount a splitter, ground it, move on to my next one. I could do that in 10 minutes. I think out of all those, I only ran a drop to like one of them, maybe ever, because like it's got a 6 drop running to it, it's got signal on it, it's decent. Like fuck it, because I figured in my mind that we're gonna go back to these anyway. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, well, I was gonna say you're actually a better technician than me because I just pull them up on Scout, and if they actually showed an active device, I would just fucking close them out.
No, I didn't. No, they didn't. No, these were ones that were they were wanting hooked up because they had either picked up equipment or they were scheduled to pick up equipment or something.
Yeah.
Like this, that I think they like scheduled on them those out back when they first started doing those SIKs. Well, you can pick up your equipment on Thursday or whatever, right? But they were backdated like so far, 2 or 3 weeks, and I rode around for a week doing those, man, and I don't remember going back to any of them on a trouble call, but I may have. If that was still a thing, I think the success rate would be better. Even though we can all agree, like Steve said it a couple weeks ago, he's like those drop and goes suck,
Yeah.
right? I'd rather just do the job. But if that's the way we're going, and now you got all these wireless boxes, you only got to really connect one outlet, dude. That may be the way of the future.
Yeah, and that kind of sucks for a lot of our techs because I don't know. I feel like that it just dwindles down the need for technicians. Your job's going to become you're going to have less time. You're going to be required to do more in a shorter amount of time. I mean, we just see over the years that number going down and down, and I think you're going to see the self-install number go up and up and up. I think you're going to see more self-installs now than you ever have before.
Oh yeah, it'll just keep getting bigger and bigger. But with that being said, I don't think the need for techs are really ever going to go away. At least not until we're old men. Because like even now, like I've been talking with some contracting companies the last few months, and that like as this COVID thing's kind of cleared up, and they're starting to let people in houses, they can't find people to do work.
Yeah.
Like
Well, yeah, because
it's
nobody wants to go into fucking people's houses.
yeah, and then on top of that, the self really I think the big thing right now is the unemployment and the extra money and shit.
See, they
But
took
at the
away
same,
all that from around here. There's no extra
yeah,
incentive to be on unemployment.
yeah, I think they did here too. I've never been on unemployment, but I think they did here too. But there were so many people that just think, man, like if you drew an extra $600 a week for 4 or 5 months, you like as a tech, you quadrupled your money. You could probably sit at home for another 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much.
So that but the need is always going to be there. Like it may be a different need in the future. Like I said before, that they may do these self-install kits and they have to hire their own private, contractor or something, right, to work
Yeah.
on wiring issues or whatever.
Yeah, I know you talked about that. And you know what? That might be another future endeavor for a lot of cable guys to start going in that direction is think about possibly building and creating some third party company that takes care of the inside of the house. It balances, you have a tech that will go in that will redo all your outlets, home run them all back to a central location, balance them all out with the appropriate splitters, and make it so every outlet should be even. And then just have the cable company come in and put a line on the outside, and that's it.
But there's a lot of people that do that. Like I got a buddy that he does for a living. He wires houses and big buildings for electric and fiber and whatever the hell, runs fiber through like big warehouses from one end to the other, and just electrical wiring and whatever. But the way that the problem is that you really need for our industry, you need a specific, like a tech. You do need a guy that understands cable, because like him, he'll run all these outlets and have them run to like a panel, but then they'll put shit ass fucking push on connectors on it and fucking 5 splitters in there, hook it all up, throw it in there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of counterproductive. They get the cable in place, but you still need a tech.
Yeah, exactly. In the end, you need a tech. So you're right. No matter how you really look at it, in the end, you might need a tech, but I just don't feel like they're going away. Like I said, I think they're just going to continue to ramp up and get more intense, and they're going to find different ways to do it. And if you're listening, and your company out there does these self-install kits, and they do them in ways that we didn't talk about, or you think people never heard of, reach out to us, let us know. Because again, self-install kits, I don't think are going away anytime soon.
No, it's going to become more and more prevalent as time moves forward, I believe.
Yeah. So
Well, man, we covered how it affects the customer.
terribly.
They terribly, yeah. Whether it's their wiring sucks and they don't know any better, or they're in an older demographics, not real tech savvy, don't understand what's going on. It is what it is. They're just not educated to the point to be able to do this. We've talked about how it jacks up the techs, man, how they can get repeated for things they weren't even involved in, how they can catch the backlash of being pissed off from whoever they talked to on the phone, or the fact that they just couldn't hook up their shit because their wiring sucked. That the tech is the person that's representing the company at that moment, and they're catching all the bullshit. How they've shoved jobs in, man, like set up the wrong ways, put them in as trouble calls, and they should have been, failed SIKs or changed the services. Kind of talked about the call center, man. Like they'll tell people, whatever they need to tell them to get them off the phone and send in whatever.
Not to mention you get those people that call in and go, "Oh yeah, never mind, I'm all set," and they fucking call back 45 minutes later, and now that call center person's getting the call back repeat. So I don't know. From all angles, you can get a lot of pissed off people, but I think it's something that, like I said, we'll continue to see a lot of, and it's always going to be there. It's definitely going to change, but it's never going away.
Well, the last thing I'll say on this is as things have progressed and got better and better over time, And you got to think, and I know there's still 59 drops hanging out there somewhere. I know there's still 59 wires in houses. I know there's still gold splitters in a house box somewhere. There's push-on fitting somewhere. I know it. They're still out there. But over the last decade,
it's behind Jesse's TV.
Actually, there is a 59 line on the floor over there.
Oh, that's fucking. Don't say that. That's terrible.
I've never used cable since I've been here. I've always had that fiber shit. But anyway, what I was getting at, man, over this last decade, we as technicians, we've done so much to replace 59 drops, to replace inside outlets, and clean shit up that at this point, self-install kits should be pretty easy, and the biggest issue to me should be customer error. There are going to be some that have shitty wiring. There are going to be some that's just not active in an apartment box. Like, you're going to have some one-offs, but the biggest issue I can see is going to be customer error, especially with this equipment where you really only got to worry about one outlet.
No, I don't know. I really think it all comes down to the education of it. I don't think if the education is done correctly or if they're not educated properly on how to do it, I don't think it's so much the stupidity of it. I think we're in the day and age of today where everybody expects everything to be way simpler than it really is. They want to have their hand held through the entire process. I think what we're going to see more of is just better, easier products to be able to install. Less steps being taken.
Yeah, and but I mean, even now, like when they mail you something, dude, it's got like step-by-step instructions of what you got to do, right?
Yep. And then I even had, because I purchased my own modem and did a self-install kit, and Spectrum actually ended up mailing me a box with jumpers, splitters, a bunch of different stuff in it, even though I purchased my own modem. So they even have been taking steps forward to make sure, even though the customer purchased their own modem, that they still have the correct wires to continue to do it.
Yeah, see, that's a big step in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, I'm going to call this one self-installs. Good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think you can call it good or bad.
Yeah, there we go.
I think it depends on the situation.
I was just gonna stay indifferent because we get a lot less hate emails that way. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to check us out on Anchor, where you can find all your podcast links on there. Also, you can record a voice message where you can hear yourself on the podcast. You can always email us at catvtechtalk@gmail.com /tell Jesse how you really feel.
Absolutely. I love you guys. and to my fan from YouTube, I forget your name, but you're fucking cool and you're badass too.
Yeah, I don't know. Apparently somebody's interested in Jesse's box. All right, I will catch you guys later. Catch us next time, and yeah, see ya.
Peace.
Like what you just heard? Then don't forget to click that subscribe button. Questions for the host or just want to say hello? You can email us at catvtechtalk@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/catvtechs. Thanks again for joining us, and don't forget, climbing, crawling, drilling, driving is just the beginning.